Hello, my name is Cindy Russell with Stamp by Stamp Creations, and today I'm going to show you how to use the Stamparatus. Previously I've showed you a couple videos just introducing the tool to you, but today I'm going to actually show you how to use it. And to start with, the first card, I'm not going to make the card, but I wanted to show you how you can line up a sentiment and make sure you get it straight in your card. And this is the new hand-penned petals stamp set. And I want to use the thanks. And instead of using the whole card, I'm going to pretend that I'm going to use just an insert that I'd place in a colored card. So I want to start with just a piece of 5 1/4 by 4 piece of paper. I don't want to put it too close in the corner because sometimes you don't get a firm pressure really close to the edges. So I'm going to put it in the middle here. And right now I am just using a piece of computer paper because I want to make sure before I stamp it in my card or on my regular cardstock that I'm going to get it straight. So I like to use the grids to line it up. And then place my magnets on, remembering not to get them too close together. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my stamp with the part that's going to make the image towards the paper and see how straight I can get it lined up about where I want it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lid or my clear plate here and press down firmly. And now this is a photopolymer stamp and they're pretty sticky, so my paper might lift a little bit when I do it, and it did. But the nice thing about lining your paper up on your grid paper is that you can make sure it goes back right back where you wanted it. And as you can see, I've got my stamp over here, and now I'm going to take my ink up my stamp, make sure I get it all covered. And if you get ink on the clear plate, it's okay because it won't transfer to your paper. And then I'm just going to take it over, place it down, and press firmly, and that looks pretty good. Now, as I mentioned, this was just a piece of scrap paper. Now let's say I wasn't real keen. It's like, maybe it is a little cockeyed. What I do is maybe it looks like the back end of it goes up a bit, and I want it a little straighter. So I'll just come over here and just kind of, I can play with that a little bit. And then this is scrap paper, so I'm just going to turn it around and put my magnets back. Ink this up again. And there you have it. And I'm not sure I like that one either. I think we're going to just start over. I'll just go back. I'll turn my paper over since it's scrap paper. And I am just going to take it. I should have probably cleaned it first, but I think I'm going to go with that. Press it down, lift it up, ink it up. And as you can see, I've got my stamp case underneath so that the plate stays level while I'm inking it up. Oh, got a lot on there, but that's okay. And there you have it. And I think that looks good. Now, if I had not inked my stamp up perfectly, and let's say I didn't get the S very well, I could just place this back down, press the S a little more, and the ink would go on it. Or I could ink up the stamp again and restamp it, and it will go perfectly right over that. So now the key, I want to do this on a regular piece of cardstock now that I've got it lined up. So I'm using this dark grid paper here. So what I want to do is take a pencil, and I just like to do this just to remind me where I've got things. And I'll just do it down here. And it kind of shows me where I want that paper to line up without having to remember, oh, was it this line or was it this one? Now I know because I marked it on my paper. So that is the advantage of not using the foam paper with the grid attached to it. If you're doing multiples or like I did, you did a sample beforehand, because you can't draw on this. So that's why I like the paper. And I'll use this under the paper also. It doesn't really matter. You just add, when using photopolymer, you just need that extra bit of foam. So I'm getting this lined up. Ink it again. Stamp and press. And it's ready for the inside of my card. And I could, if I was making a bunch of thank you note cards, I could just keep lining them up and it would stamp perfectly every time, which is the beauty of the Stamparatus. So instead of cleaning that, I'm just going to take a new clear plate, because I do have a couple of Stamparatus. And the next thing I want to show you is how I made this background, because I was just using this stamp. I don't know if it's colored enough, discolored enough that you can see. It's just 2 rows of hearts, and here I've got a whole background of hearts. And I made the hearts are from the Borders to Backgrounds stamp set. That is very nice. And the heart and the little sentiment are from the Lots of Heart bundle, which is going to be retiring in the end of June. So if you like it, you might want to grab it. But the way I made that background, and I don't know, no, you won't be able to see it, so I won't worry about that. I started with a piece of cardstock again, and I'm just going to line it up on that same spot that I had the last one. And since I'm going to get the top, I'll leave these at the bottom here. But what I did is I just line that up. And this piece is actually slightly larger than the piece I used on my card. I could, because this is what I grabbed, but you could use the correct size piece. But I did the same. I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to line this up as good as I can, press it, and get it onto the clear plate. And now I have a little secret I want to share with you. Our regular sized ink pads are wonderful. The foam, they get lots of ink on them. But when you use them, you noticed on the last time when I used my Memento ink pad, which isn't squishy, it's a little firmer, I managed to get ink on the clear plate. Well, if you're using a full-size Stampin' Up! Ink pad that's foam, you are going to get ink everywhere. It's just the way it works. So when I'm using the Stamparatus in colored ink, I actually like to use a Stampin' Spot. And they're easy to make your own, which is what I did with this one. You can purchase the uninked Stampin' Spots from the catalog, and they will be in the new catalog also. And they're so much easier to use because they don't make quite the mess. So I just inked it up, let it sit, and then now I'm going to just ink this up, and I'm not getting it all over the clear plate. Then I'm going to stamp this. And that looks pretty good. Now I've got to make room for my next row, because what I'm going to do is I am just going to move this down. This is the hinge stamping, because I'm going to move the clear plate down this row of hinges. So I'm going to get it perpendicular, just lift it up, place it down, move it over, ink it up, press, press, press. Well, it's perpendicular, lift up, move it down a row. And press again. And I would just continue that down until my paper was filled. Now you notice that I have space in here, and on my card it was completely filled in. So what I did, let's see, let me grab a wipe here and just get this, most of the ink off it first. I took that off and I placed it again, just like I did the first time, kind of where I wanted it to be. And I lined it up right in that white space. Started at the top again of my hinge. Pressed it down, lifted it up. And you see I made a little bit of mess, but it's where I wanted it. So when I totally ink it up, it should just cover those spots. Press, lift, and press, oops, press again. And that is how you can make a full background. Or I could have left just the rows with the white space in between, but that is hinge stamping, and that's pretty fun. Now this next thing I want to show you is when, especially it's useful when you are making more than one of the same card. And this stamp is a cling stamp set, so I don't need the foam, but I do want to keep my grid paper on there. So I'm just going to get these on there. And what I want to do is I'm going to show you how to make, easy it is to make multiples of the same thing. You could just stamp them many times and get your punch out and punch it, but then you're always messing around trying to get it perfectly centered in your punch. And there's an easier way with your Stamparatus. So I need to start with a piece of scrap paper, and I wanted a smaller one, but I forgot to grab that. Oops, let's get another plate in here for you. So what I'm going to do is take my paper, take my punch, and just stamp, or excuse me, punch out my dragonfly. So I've got my dragonfly here, and I've got my cardstock. Now I found that the easiest way to get this all lined up is to actually just place my dragonfly where I want it. And since this paper's so big, I'm going to have to put it down a little bit. And see if I get them kind of lined up. Ink them up. Then I stamped it on my grid paper. And as you can see, I didn't really get it very straight. But that's okay. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that image, that open dragonfly image, and center that, get it perfectly around that dragonfly till I'm happy with it. And it doesn't matter that it's not lined up on the grid paper. I just needed some paper on there so I could stamp. So then we're going to put that down. And now I'm going to take the punched dragonfly, place it in there, ink up my stamp again, and stamp my dragonfly. And then grab them out, and you can see it's lined up perfectly. So then the next one I want to make, I just have to punch out, I'll just do it from the scrap here, punch out another dragonfly, place it in the opening, ink up my stamp, press it down, and again, I have a perfectly centered dragonfly punched out. This is very easy, and it's a great way to use your Stamparatus. Now you can also, and it works not just for punched images, but it works for die cuts too. So if you were making your Christmas cards and you had a little pine tree or something, like if you use the pine tree punch, you would just punch out all the pine trees willy-nilly. That doesn't have to be straight or anything on there, out of the plain cardstock. Then you would go through this step, or a die cut, same thing. But you would just line it up, then put the blank ones into the opening, stamp away, and they're perfectly centered. It really works well with die cut pieces, so that you don't have to mess around with the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine and have your dies move on you and it make a mess. But the Stamparatus is definitely a very useful tool, and I think you all should have one in your craft room. Like I mentioned before, I've got two, so when I have classes, or when I get back to having classes in my home, more than one person can be doing it at the same time. But I really do like my Stamparatus, and I think you will too. Have a great day, and thanks. Happy stamping. Bye-bye.